I don't care how old your parents are and how old you are. You just don't think that it's ever really going to happen. I mean, intellectually, you know it is, but emotionally, you're not ready for it. Why, hello, everyone, and welcome to Silver and Sensational with moi, Lois as in Lois Mills. Egads, the Golden Bachelorette. So, I just don't know what to say. I say this every week to you. I don't know what to say because as bad as it is, it just, for me, keeps getting worse. Let me start with the good news. The good news is it was only 90 minutes, not 120. That was absolutely a plus. Unless you are in AA. I swear to you, the only way to get through this is to take a sip of a drink every time she mentions the future or one of the guys mentions having a connection with her.
He's got a real connection with Joan.
Everybody has a connection. I don't know how this happens because I can't tell you. I don't get to feel connections with that many people so quickly in really what looks to be a minimum amount of time that they're spending with each other. But at any rate, let's get started. It opens up with her invitation to a group date, which is on the card written, "Let's bear it all for love." Now, not everybody in this group of 11, because now we're down to just 11 fellows, is walking around with a six-pack. So I'm not sure how this is going to play. But what they do is they end up in a theater somewhere, and the Chippendales are there doing their dance. Now, the Chippendales are at least well into their 60s. And let me tell you, those guys still have quite a six-pack.
First up, have any of you guys ever stripped before?
No. I strip at home.
All the fellows go into a room where there's all these different costumes. And I have to say the one that I was most intrigued with was Jonathan. Jonathan was in camouflage vest, no shirt, pants, and underneath, gold jockeys. So the Chippendales give them, the moves, and, these guys are trying to do the moves, and Jonathan gets up there and he strips down and he goes in. Now he's got a pretty good body and he's a very handsome man. And he does his thing in front of her in the gold jockeys. And I'm telling you, now there's an audience in here and the women are screaming like one of those things that some people do for girls' night, going to a guy, to a strip club and putting, throwing money and all this stuff. It was kind of fun in a way. And I'm thinking, great, it's going to be fun. No more crying, no more maudlin sentiments. And then we find out it's for cancer, Stand Up for Cancer, which, believe me, is a wonderful cause. But then this causes tears. Joan is a cause very dear to her heart, and she starts remembering her husband's death. And a couple of the men who also were touched by cancer. This, again, maudlin. But, the one saving grace to all these guys is our Frenchman, Pascal. Pascal is just a hell of a lot of fun. And Pascal was very eager to rip off his T-shirt. And as he says later on, he could rip the hell off of this because it was one of those cheap things that they put in the dressing room because Prada doesn't rip like this one. And Pascal has a damn good body. This guy is 69 years old, but you can tell he's a gym rat. I mean, he's got a pretty decent body. And he was a lot of fun. And then now, God, do I have to get to CHOCK? I really have an issue with CHOCK. So CHOCK is in a tuxedo, no shirt. And, one of the things I am not quite sure as to why Chock and Joan, seem to feel they have, it's like they're already a couple. So what the hell are the rest of them doing there? I'll get into more of that, but I feel they seem to have some kind of understanding between them that, it's not silent. It's not covert. It is so open. I can't help but believe everybody feels she's already made up her mind, and he is still pushy. So anyway, let me tell you, he gets up to her and he does this dry humping, which I find so completely gross on national television. I just do. And, the kisses and the hugs, and he just can't keep his hands off of her. And, oh, Jesus, I don't understand why they seem to really, really push. I'm talking they being the producers. Why they're letting this happen, unless this is a build-up to the big breakup, that one of them does something the other one can't stand. It looks like a fait accompli. I just don't get it. But, little Charles, our shy little Charles, well, he let loose. He has a Hawaiian shirt with a baseball cap, and I'm not certain why he has to have a baseball cap on with the Hawaiian shirt. I'm not making this connection, but it was kind of fun to see Charles, starting to loosen up. You could tell he was really having a wonderful, wonderful time. So now cocktail time kind of rolls around, and Chock pulls Joan off so they can talk one-on-one. He starts talking about, his mom and how sick she is. And the only reason he would have left her was for Joan. I'm thinking, you didn't even know her before you got there. And then, she tells him, how much she thinks of him. And this is, to me, so intense, so quickly, but she thinks of him all the time. Again, she does the same story that she feels so safe around him. I should have kept count along with the feeling connected. God, it's hard to believe that these two people together are somewhere around 139, 140 years old with the two, if you had the two of them. And he starts hugging, and they get very passionate. She gives a rose to Chock and tells him that she feels this deep, deep connection.
He's got a real connection with Joan.
The next morning, we get this news. Chock's mother has passed away. And, we get it. It's just when they show details like the caretaker on the phone telling him the moment his mother died at 4:40 something a.m. And of course he's upset, and interestingly enough, it's kind of interesting that at his age, this is the first parent he's lost. And I don't minimize, I don't care how old your parents are and how old you are. You just don't think that it's ever really going to happen. Intellectually, it is, but emotionally, you're not ready for it. So he's telling the fellows, and of course, now we get a couple of other people starting to cry with him. I just never saw so many overly, and I do say overly emotional men crying over all kinds of stuff. So on the other hand, it's really nice to see the camaraderie that these men have developed. Now that's where they do have what seems to be a real connection.
He's got a real connection with Joan.
It's like the real thing. When Joan is arriving for her one-on-one date with Jordan. Chuck meets her at the SUV and, he's obviously upset and she wants to know what's wrong, and he's hesitating and get on with it. And he tells her, and Jesus, Jenny, you would think that this has been her mother-in-law for the last 40 years. Oh my God, and she feels so bad, and they're squeezing and hugging and crying, and she's crying, and he's crying, and he's going to have to go, and he has to go take care of things, and he has to leave, and he doesn't want to leave her, and she, oh my God, it's just, I don't know where all this is coming from. It just doesn't end with all of this huggy, kissy, feely. She talks about being a caretaker and he's a caretaker, and there's something in the way I see her responding to Chuck that I'm sensing she tends to take on and absorb everyone else's situation. And I'm not saying that that's a good thing. I don't think it's a good thing for her. But if that's who she is, that's who she is. But, to get this emotionally invested in someone else's life, I understand she's compassionate and empathetic, but it seems to me to go beyond that. But then again, I'm not a shrink, but it just seems to me that she's already in this hook, line, and sinker. And I wonder where you go from here. Is she going to absorb his entire life? And I'm not sure he's so different from her in that regard. But the difference I feel about Chuck from her reactions is I think she is genuine. I may not agree with what she's doing, but I do believe she's genuine. I am not feeling that out of Chuck. I'm feeling Chuck wants to win her over. Between you and me, I think Chuck is so lustful after her that he just wants to jump into bed and fuck her brains out. Damn! Then again, who am I to say? So, all this crying and hugging and heartbreak, and he's leaving, and she doesn't know if she's ever going to see him again. And now she's got to do an about face because she's walking over to be with her one-on-one date with Jordan. Now, here's where the producers really pissed me the hell off. Again, we're talking about people with a combined age of 140. And this one-on-one date is in an ice skating rink. But if you had seen the way they were put together, helmet, elbow guards, shin guards, knee guards, are they going into battle? Are they jousting? I'm getting the feeling that, when these fellows filled out their applications, they had to put down what are they good at, what aren't they good at, what have they never done, whatever. Because, last week they put Jonathan on a horse, and Jonathan was never on a horse. This week, we've got Jordan ice skating. Jordan's never been on ice skates. He should have had an ass guard because this poor guy was on his ass more than he was on those blades. If it's supposed to be cute or funny, I just find it stupid. I find it stupid. And then REO's Speedwagon comes and they start singing, and then the two of them off the rink now, they're on this little rug that's on top of the ice, and they start dancing. And, he was married, he had 3 kids, and his wife cheated on him, and they tried to work it out. They went to marriage counseling. It just didn't work. So he moved out with the kids into a little 2-bedroom in Wicker Park in Chicago. And now, his kids adore him. And he came right out and said that, his children were the center of his life, in which she said the same thing, that her kids are the center of her life. And again, I go back to what I've been saying all along. You live here, she lives there. Your kids are the most important. Her kids are the most important. So who's going to do what to get together if all of this is the case? I will say that I enjoyed hearing a little more about him, and I did get to feel like I liked him a little bit better than I did before. And of course, she did give him a rose, and he was kissing and acting very romantic. And now, it's hard for me to understand, her. Yeah, I guess she's on TV. She's going to be romantic back in a way. And then we have a second one-on-one with Guy. He's the ER doctor. So she is staying in what looks to be a very nice home in Malibu. And they're going to stay at home and they're going to cook together. Well, now, this was a bust. This was really a bust. Hold on one second. Pardon me, but our Jackie was just not having a good time because I wasn't paying attention to her. So we've got her for a bit. Now, once again, Guy never cooked. And this guy couldn't even zest a lemon.
Do you know how to zest a lemon?
I don't think I like seeing a man made a fool of. I understand that it's all for show, but it just seemed to be a little too much. And by the way, they were making what looked like a lemon mac and cheese. It ended up being absolutely delicious. Oh, he can't keep his eyes off of her.
That I've not had for years.
Guy was married 30 years, and as he said, and I can relate to that. For a lot of the years, it was good until it wasn't. He was they really got into it with one another, and he ends up having a dopamine surge, like only a doctor would be able to describe it. The rose came, and of course, Guy, would you accept this rose? Of course. Well, I'm sure she is never going to not give one of the guys with whom she's on a one-on-one date because she doesn't want them to feel bad. I mean, you're just the two of you, and, you're not going to give them a rose. And I mean, it's a have to. I mean, that's something you have to. And then we get a few minutes of Joan alone where she is so worried about CHOCK. First of all, because she cares about him so much. And then she's so afraid that he's not going to come back. And then there's a little cocktail party. And Pascal and she have a little one-on-one, and he wants to know if she's missed him. And she says she's not sure that he really has any kind of interest in her. And he's like really shocked. Yeah, one thing she likes about Pascal's a lot of fun. And she said she just didn't feel, and he assures her that he didn't want to appear pushy or whatever, but she kept saying, well, maybe it's just a French thing. But he assures her over and over again that he is very interested in her. And I think she just wanted to get it clear in her head if he was really there because he was interested in her and he had intentions of wanting a future with her, or if he just wanted to be on TV. But I think, I think he just didn't want to appear very pushy, and I find that far more attractive than CHOCK. CHOCK seems to assume that he's the one. I kind of like, for my own personal taste, I find Pascal's approach of being a little laid back, not so in your face. See, the thing I really dislike very much about CHOCK is his assuming that he's the one because she's given him what he is perceiving to be more attention, more dedication. And of course, you know what? There she is. They're at cocktail. She's outside for a moment, and here comes CHOCK. Here comes the knight in shining armor. I'm surprised they didn't have him coming in on a goddamn white horse. And she's so happy, and he's so happy. And she again feels safe. CHOCK is back. Now I've got to address, this is something that bothers me. She is so certain she sees a future with CHOCK. She feels this connection, and she feels safe with him, and she hasn't felt safe since her husband has passed, which is something I'm going to get to in a second. And she sees a future with, and then we'll hear her say, I could see a future with Guy. I could see a future with Pascal. how do you see so many futures? I mean, I just feel the whole thing's so convoluted. The fellows and she agree in one thing, that they're afraid of getting hurt. I know this feeling. And I think a lot of us who have been hurt by loss are afraid of being hurt. But wow, and wow some more, because this CHOCK, I just find him to be just a little too certain of his position with her. By his own admission, he can't keep his hands off her. He's almost like mauling her. I mean, hands are on her thighs, they're, in between her thighs. I don't mean in a lewd way, but, there's a familiarity there that, do I know if they've slept together already or not? No, I don't know. I don't know what the format is. I don't know if this is something that goes on or not. But for me, as an observer and trying to figure out what would I do in that spot or how would I feel about it, I think he's way too familiar. And you don't see the other guys all over her with their hands on an ongoing basis like he is. So now we come to the very end of this, and 4 roses are there. And, I will say, I think I said in the very beginning, I really dislike reality programs. I haven't changed my feelings about reality programs because it's very hard for me to sit and watch this kind of stuff without picking it apart and being cynical. But I will say at the very end, when she has to send these, some of the fellows home, I don't get teary-eyed, believe me, no tears. However, I do feel kind of bad because each of them, they kind of grow on you. And what's really fun to see is not only how much they didn't want to leave without being with her, but they didn't want to leave each other because they really bonded with one another. And I'm not certain that women would have done the same. See, I didn't watch the Golden Bachelor like I am watching this, but you haven't watched that episode, which was last year. I can just briefly tell you that I really did not like seeing women competing with one another for a fellow that I really didn't like when I first saw him. Then when I found out what a goddamn liar he was, and the 1.5 minute marriage, and then for the producers to bring him back this year to give her advice, excuse me. Generally speaking, I know gals, it's not nice to say, but we kind of sometimes do get a little too competitive with other women, whereas, the boys are still part of the old boys club. So at any rate, Charles was not given a rose, which was understandable. There wasn't any connection, although she did tell him she loved him and he changed her life. You've changed my life. God, I'm not sure how he did that, but it was a nice thing to say. Gary, who I really like, with the exception of the crying and the prayers, I have to say, but I like Gary. And Dan, who, we didn't really get to see a lot of Dan, but there was something about Dan's face and Dan's smile. He seemed sweet. He seemed unassuming, and he seemed sweet. So I was sad to see him go. So next week, we're going to see Pascal and Jonathan and Mark and Pete, and we take it from there. So in the meantime, I'm going to hope that you enjoyed today's episode and that you tune in again. And if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Those numbers are kind of staying around the same, so maybe you can subscribe if you haven't. It doesn't cost you anything. No one bothers you. And perhaps share me with your friends and ask them to subscribe. Do hit the like button, press the notification bell, because sometimes our Jessica can get us out on Friday, sometimes on Saturdays, sometimes on Sunday, because we've had to change our schedule based on the airing of the Golden Bachelorette. So in the meantime, thank you for tuning in.